This week and for the next 2 weeks, so projects 5, 6, and 7, we'll be working on modeling and rendering this space, which is based on a hotel lobby in Spain. This week we will be modeling the floor, the walls, the fountain, and the plants. Next week we'll add the doors, the windows, which are all custom, the columns, and all of the molding. And then the third week we'll work on lighting and 2D plans. As part of the lighting in the third week, we'll do both this daytime scene and a nighttime version. I'll talk more about this when we get there, but because of your computer, some of you may not be able to do the lighting rendering portion of this, so I'll talk about what the plan for that is in Project 7. Just a brief word about this space. So this is based on a real hotel lobby. This is the Hotel Palacio de Villapanes in Seville. I was looking for some kind of old world, I guess, architecture that could be the basis for either a theater set or a film or television set or a themed experience, and I ran across this lobby, and I thought it had some interesting shapes and was just kind of an interesting lobby, so I chose that. Also, there were lots of photographs of it online and lots of detail photographs, which makes it easier to model. And particularly enticing to me was the marble floor, not only because it's interesting, but also because these appear to be 12-inch or the metric equivalent 12-inch square tiles, which makes it easier to figure out what the overall size and scale of things are. So whenever I'm looking for research photographs online or even taking them in person, I try to find something that is helps me establish the size and the scale of things. So speaking of that, we will start by modeling the floor. There are two different ways to approach modeling the floor. We can either approach it with each square as an individual tile that's individually textured, and so we have hundreds of tiles. Or we could approach it as one large rectangle that's extruded and then has an image of the floor applied to it. Probably the most economical way in terms of computer memory and speed and rendering is to approach it as one large rectangle with an image texture applied to it. However, in order to create that image texture, we still have to lay out all of the tiles, either in Vectorworks or in Photoshop or in somewhere, so that we can get the image. So what we're going to do is go ahead and model it as individual tiles. And then once we've done that, we'll capture that as an image and look at how to do it the other way. Through a little bit of trial and error, I discovered that if you create 4 different groupings of tiles and turn them into symbols, you can repeat those 4 different groupings and come up with the entire floor. So we're going to start by creating the first of those groups as a symbol, and it's going to be the corner, and it's going to look like this. So let's go into Vectorworks and get started. The first thing we want to do is find the marble textures that we're going to use to create these symbols. Sometimes I do textures last. In this particular case, we're going to do textures as we go along. So I want to find these. So I'm going to want to make sure that my resource manager is open and that I'm in the right file, the newly created blank file, and then I'm set to all resources here. And then I'm going to do a search for gray marble. Oops, gray marble. And what I'm looking for is Stone Marble Dark Gray RT, which stands for RenderWorks Texture, and Stone Marble Gray 04 RT. So I'm going to use 04 first. So I'm going to right click on this and import it into my document and I want to put it into the scenery textures folder. So that's Stone Marble Gray 04. And then I also want to import Stone Marble Dark Gray RT. So right click, import. We're also going to put it in the scenery textures folder. Okay. And then I need to do a little editing. So I'm going to go to the scenery textures folder, open it up. And the first thing I want to do is duplicate the Stone Marble Gray 04 texture. So right click and duplicate. And we're going to call this Stone Marble Gray 05. And what we need are two slightly different light gray marbles. So we're just going to add a little bit of a tint to 4 to turn it into 5. So now that we've created 5, we're going to edit 5. And here in image, we're going to click edit. And we're going to add a filter, use chosen color. And we're going to just add a little bit of a light gray. I'm going to try, I think, like 25%. That might be too dark, but let's see what happens. So filter, use chosen color, 25% gray. Okay. And so that will give us a just a darker version. Actually, 25 looks too dark. Let's back off to 15. Yeah, that looks better. So that'll give us a darker version of the light gray. So we have a dark, almost black gray. We have a medium light gray, and we have a slightly darker light gray. So that will get us started with the textures. Then the next thing we want to do is create a rectangle. So this is going to be a 12-inch rectangle. So I'm just going to use the rectangle tool, double click. We're going to do a 12-inch rectangle. And then I'm going to rotate it 45 degrees. Rotate 45. Okay, good. Then I'm going to duplicate that. And I need triangles. So I'm going to use the line tool to draw a line across the center there. Then I'm going to select both things and do a clip surface. Modify clip surface. Good. Gonna delete this. Oh, yes, good idea. Bert's Project 5. I'm going to delete this one, and then I'm going to make this one into a darker gray. Doesn't really matter what color, because this is not going to be part of the rendering. This is just going to be part of the final 2D plans, but let's try 20% for that. So now that I have my two shapes, I'm going to start laying out this shape. So we've got 4 triangles across the top and 4 down the side. So here we're going to duplicate that and put that one here. So that's 2, 3, 4. And then I can grab all of this, all 4 of them, and I can either duplicate them, or I can use the mirror tool to mirror them across a 45-degree line, like that. And then I just need to fill in the squares to complete the shape. So it should end up looking like that when we're done. I think that's it though. Let's see. Yep, that's it. Okay, so that's our initial shape. Then I'm gonna I'm going to duplicate all of this because I want to have a 2D version available to create the symbol after I have extruded these rectangles. So now I'm going to select them all and do a model extrude -1 inch. And now I have an extrude that's just one extrude, but I can ungroup it, which I'll need to do to apply individual textures to the individual tiles. So I'm going to do a modify ungroup. And I'm just going to go into OpenGL here so we can see what we have. So the next thing I'm going to do is select all of the triangles here on the left, the ones that are 3D, and apply the dark gray texture to them. Can I just double click? Yep, there we go, great. Okay. Oh, I missed one. Did it again. Let's try that for the third time. There we go. Then I'm going to select everything and then deselect the triangle so that I have all of the rectangles, and I'm going to go ahead and apply one of the four. So I'm going to double click there. And then I'm just going to randomly select some of these to make them into the darker. You don't want it to look like a checkerboard, so don't get too like this. It's probably not good here. Let's go back to there. Maybe that one. And the good thing about creating this as a symbol, you can always look at this later once you've laid out the whole floor and see if this is too matchy. So once I've extruded these, ungrouped them, and applied the marble texture to them, I'm then going to put the 2D version back on top so that I can select all of that and turn it into a hybrid 2D, 3D symbol. So modify, create symbol, floor corner. Okay. And we're going to put that in the scenery symbols folder. So there's symbol number 1. So let's take a look at symbol number 2. So symbol number 2 is the sides. And you'll notice that it bears a striking resemblance to symbol number 1. It is in fact exactly the same, except that it doesn't have the 4 triangles down the left side. So we're going to do a little copying and cutting and pasting. So we're going to double click on this, and I'm going to edit the 3D component. Edit. I'm going to copy it all. Exit symbol and paste. And then I also want to double click here, and now I want to edit the 2D component and select it all, copy, and paste. Yes, please. And while I'm at it, I'm going to select both of these things and duplicate them because we're going to use them one more time. So now I can just delete here and delete here. And let's take a look at the reference again and make sure that this is what we want. Yes, it is. So then I can just put my 2D back on top, select it all, create symbol. We're going to call this floor side. Okay. We're going to put it in the scenery symbols folder. And there we have that. And I'm just going to, just for a second, go to wireframe and make sure that we're seeing the right 2D. And we are. Okay. So now we're going to look at our third symbol, and you'll notice that it is once again very similar. Now it's just the one that we just created, only it doesn't have any of the black triangles. So we'll go down here to the copy we made, we'll get rid of, these black triangles and those and these and those, and we'll select all of this and put it on top. And then select everything and modify create symbol. This is going to be floor interior. Put it in this scenery symbols folder. And then our final symbol is just 4 black rectangles. So I could copy those, but it's just as easy just to make this. So 12-inch rectangle, rotate 45 degrees. What color did we make it last time? 20%. I just want to make sure it's the same color. Yes, it is. Look at that. Okay, so I'm gonna duplicate that. Then I'm gonna duplicate all 4 of those. I'm gonna extrude these -1 inch. We're gonna apply the black or dark gray texture to them. We'll just go to OpenGL and make sure that that all looks good. Great. Then we'll select the 2D ones. We'll put them on top. We'll select it all. We'll create a symbol. And we're going to call this floor line of rectangles, or divider, or symbol 4 or something. And we'll put that in the scenery symbols folder. I should say at this point that if you are not planning on, if you're modeling something and you're just modeling it just because you want the rendering and you're not planning on creating any 2D plans from it, there's no reason to make a 2D, 3D hybrid symbol. You still want to make symbols, but you could just leave out the putting the 2D part in and just group the 3D parts together and make symbols out of those. So it works either way. So now that I have my 4 symbols, let's take a look at the finished floor and see what we're actually aiming for. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have a floor that's made up of an 8x8 overall rectangle of the symbols. So here's 1. We put that there. That's 2. And then if we select both of these symbols and duplicate them, that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we duplicate our divider, put it there. Then we can mirror the corner across the center. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the center should be here. Great. And there's our top row. Now we're going to duplicate our divider and rotate it left. Rotate left. Oh, I have to be in top plan. You would think after all these years I would know that. Modify, rotate left. Put it there. Duplicate. There. Duplicate some more. Okay. Now I need a side. I just duplicated that. I'm going to rotate it left. It's going to go there. While I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and mirror it across to the other side. I'm going to duplicate my divider. Put it there. I'm going to put my interior piece right there. I'm going to select the interior and the divider. I'm going to duplicate there. Continue duplicating. We need to fill in the divider there. Then I can select this entire row and duplicate it and put it there. And then if I do that one more time, that is 4. Then can I mirror the whole thing? 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I can. So I'm going to select all of it, and I'm going to mirror it. And then I just need to go back in and put the center, the divider here that's missing. So I'm going to select all of that. We're going to duplicate that and move it down here to go right there. So that is what we just made. This is what it's supposed to look like. Let's go ahead and put this in OpenGL. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Good, great. Okay, so that is our floor. I'm going to go ahead and group this together. So that is the first. I'm going to put the center of this, which should be right here in the center of my page. So that is one way of doing this. The other way of doing this would be to create somehow this image and turn it into a texture and then apply it to a single rectangle. So let's just go ahead and do that since we can. So I'm just going to render this. I'm going to put this in final. And then I can export image. I'm going to draw a marquee around this entire image. I'm going to leave all that the same. I'm going to export it as a JPEG. Save. Marble floor image. It's going to think for a minute while it renders. And then if I want to, I'm going to put that back in wireframe so it doesn't start rendering again. If I wanted to create first I need to know how big this is. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle right here. And this rectangle is 45 feet 3 inches square. So I'm going to go into Resource Manager. I'm going to create a new resource, RenderWorks texture, create marble floor texture. We're going to find the image that we just created, which should be right here. Okay. 45 feet 3, right? 45 feet. Okay. Then we can extrude this -1 inch. Okay, go to OpenGL here for a second. And then we can just apply the marble floor texture that we just created to that floor. You'll notice that there's a little color variation, so I would probably want to go into, take this image first into Photoshop or something and darken it. I also would want to look at the reflection that's going on in the marble of the actual marble texture. So I'm going to click Edit here and just see, so it's got mirror reflectivity that's set to 25%. So I would want to go to my marble floor texture and edit it and set mirror reflectivity to 25%. Just so I got the same look. So either one of these approaches is valid. The advantage well, there are advantages and disadvantages to both. This one is gonna probably render faster. This one is more flexible and can be changed a little more easily if you decide to. If you wanted to make it a red and black floor, you could just change the black texture or something. So either approach is equally valid. I'm gonna stick with this one, so I'm gonna delete this. So there is the floor. I just remembered that when I originally built this, I discovered that after I built the doors and realized they needed to be recessed, there really needs to be an 8-inch black border around this whole thing. So I'm going to edit this. I'm going to duplicate or double click to edit this group. I'm going to draw a rectangle here. We're going to use the offset tool, set to 8 inches. To make one that's 8 inches larger. I'm going to send that to back. Then I'm going to select both of the rectangles, which may be tricky because there we go. I'm going to clip surface. I'm going to delete the interior rectangle. I'm going to extrude this -1 inch and apply the black stone to it. Okay. So now I have the floor that I need to move along to the next part of the project. Next, we're going to work on the fountain. So in order to start that, we're going to lay out the overall size, which is going to be an octagon. So I'm going to use the regular polygon tool set to 8 sides. And I want the circumscribed mode, which just means I'm going from the center to the center of a side rather than from the center to a corner. So octagon in circumscribed mode, I'm going to start here in the center. I'm going to pull out and click tab, and we're going 3 feet 6 inches. Return. So there's the overall footprint of the fountain. And so that we can work on this without having to deal with the floor, I'm going to go ahead and group this octagon. And then I can double click to go into the group and we can work on the fountain by itself. I have a file, the PDF, that you're going to import and use to create the profiles to sweep the center of the fountain and extrude a long path. Whoa. The base of the fountain, but I want to explain first where that came from. So I used this research image and brought it into Vectorworks. I just drug this in and used it as a basis to create the shape that's in the PDF file that you have in WebCourses. So you don't need to do this. I'm just going to show you what I did. So I basically created a center line. And then, because this is a perspective photograph, you have to sort of think about what's going on here. The top of this is not actually curving down. It's curving around, but it's not actually curving down. So in order to be able to be a little more accurate, rather than trying to draw exactly what I see here, I usually establish at the center the points where things are happening, so etc. I'm just going to make these red so that you can see them. So then when I'm using the polygon tool to rough in the shape of the fountain, I'm not drawing the curve on the edge right here where it is in the photograph, but I'm actually drawing it up here, because that's where it actually is at center if you take into account the fact that it curves away here because it's in perspective. So hopefully that makes sense. So I drew a center line here, I transferred the lines out, and then drew the shape that you have in the PDF. That's where these shapes came from. So speaking of the PDF, often for real spaces, often there are sometimes drawings available that you can ask the space for, or sometimes they're available online if it's a space that does lots of events, or and sometimes you just have to do what I just showed you. But we're going to assume that we have called the hotel and asked them if they have a drawing of their fountain, and they've sent us this PDF. So if you file, import PDF, you should have previously downloaded the fountain profiles PDF. We'll just bring that in. It will come in like this. Hopefully it's marked in some way to tell you what the scale is. So it's in 1/2 inch scale, and we're in 1/2 inch scale. If it was in 1/4 inch scale, you might need to scale it up. You would need to modify a scale and make it twice as big, or something. So just, you have to pay attention to what scale you're in. But so here are the shapes. We're in the right scale. There's over in object info, if the PDF was created in a drafting program, which often they are, or even Illustrator or any kind of vector program, often you can click the magic snap to geometry button, which will let you actually snap to parts of the PDF, which is really handy. So what you want to do is just draw these two shapes using the shape here as a guide. So what I usually do is rough the shape in with the polygon tool, and then go back and use the reshape tool to refine the shapes. If you're a heavy-duty Illustrator user and are really good at the pen tool in Illustrator and can use the polyline tool, then by all means do that. But that tool eludes me. I find it easier to do it this way. So I'm just going to establish all of the major corners of this shape. So if I were drawing this from scratch, I would be drawing this shape, roughing it in on top of the photograph that I just showed you. So then when I'm finished with that, I'm going to set the fill to none, and then I can go back with the reshape tool and add curves. And okay, so this tells me that this is not a true radius curve, so I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to try a cubic spline curve instead, which will let me fit the shape a little better. There we go. The rest of these are probably radius curves. So yeah. So then I'm just going to use this tool and go in and refine the shape to match. Sometimes when you click on points, it thinks you're kidding, so it didn't actually insert these 2 points. So I'm going to have to go back and add corner vertices rather, which sometimes can be irritating. So I'm going to move that one up to there, and then I'm going to put that one there, and then it looks like I need to, whoops, actually add another one here. Then I can go back to curving. All right, so we've created that shape, and then you'll want to do exactly the same thing here with the other shape. And once you've drawn those two shapes, you can delete the PDF and then go ahead and make sure that those are filled again. Next, we're going to select both of these and go to left view and rotate them right to stand them up. And then we can go ahead and sweep the fountain. Model sweep. Okay. And then we can take the exterior profile piece and line it up with the octagon. I'm going to put it right there in the center. And then select them both and do an extrude along path. Model extrude along path. Select the octagon as the path. Make sure to fix the profile. Click OK. Then we can switch to front and move our fountain to the center. And then we're going to go back to top and make sure that it is in the center there. And then back to isometric. And nobody can really see it, but it seems weird to me that the fountain doesn't have a bottom because all the water is going to leak out. So I'm going to go ahead and make another octagon and extrude it an inch. To give the fountain a bottom so the water doesn't all leak out. Back to front and make sure that it's there. And now that I've made that, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that. And I'm going to put it maybe like right here. And it is eventually going to actually become the water once we put a water texture on it. So that is the overall fountain. Next, we're going to work on the detail of the carving on the sides of the fountain. So if we take a look here at our finished fountain, there are these details on the sides that are basically routed into the marble. So we're going to create those by doing an extrude along path and then subtracting that extrude from the sides. So let's go into front view, and then we'll use the rectangle tool in automatic mode to draw this rectangle right on top of itself. Let's actually go to wireframe. This might be easier. Yeah, so we're going, whoops, wrong plane. that we want this plane. So I'm going to draw that rectangle, which is, because of the automatic working plane, right on top of the front face of the fountain. Then we're going to use the offset tool, and we're going to offset by 3 inches. And then we need to draw a 4-inch radius circle. And put it there. And we're going to duplicate that and put one in each of the 4 corners. I can either keep duplicating or I can just use the mirror tool. Then I'm going to select all 4 circles and the rectangle and do a clip surface, and hit delete. So now we have our shape. Then I want to create this shape that we're going to extrude. So this is just a half circle, so that's being subtracted. So we're going to extrude a full circle. I think it's probably 1.5 inches. Let's see what that looks like. 1.5 inches diameter, 1.5 inches. Yeah, that seems right. So with the circle selected and the shape selected, we'll do a model extrude along path. We don't want to fix the profile in this case because we haven't aligned them. All right, there's that. I'm going to look at this in top view and make sure that it's, so it's halfway inside the panel and halfway outside because we extruded it on the face of the panel, if that makes sense. So there's there's what that looks like. So I can now subtract this original rectangle that we used. Then I'm going to duplicate array to put this shape on all 8 sides, to put it on the other 7 sides of the fountain. So edit, duplicate array. We want a circular array. I want 7 copies. I want 360 divided by 8. And I want to center on the next mouse click and rotate the duplicates. So we'll center it on the center there. It'll think for a second. So now it has duplicated that 7 times. I'll go ahead and also select the first one. I'm going to go back to isometric here just so we can see what's going on. Maybe even to OpenGL. And then I'm going to select the fountain surround along with the 8 shapes and do a model subtract solids. We'll think for a minute. And now we have the shapes routed in basically to the edge of the fountain. Next, we're going to apply textures. So I'm going to select all of the parts, go to the resource manager, open the scenery textures folder, and we're going to apply the stone marble 04, the same one we used on the floor. So I'm just going to double click on that. We'll let it think for a minute. And there is the marble in the fountain. We want this to actually be water. So I'm going to go back to the resource manager and I'm going to search for water. If I can spell it right. And we're looking for landscape water clear. I have 2 of them here because I have a couple of different files open and they're in those files, but they're both the same. So I'm just going to double click on that. I'm going to put it in the scenery textures folder. And there we have the water in the fountain. Speaking of water in the fountain would probably look more like a fountain if there was actually water coming out of the top of it. Something more like this. So the way we're going to do that is by actually using this image. I took this image into Photoshop and created this image. It's literally just this copied and cleaned up a little bit. So we're going to use this image to create an image prop that's going to be the water that is coming out of the top of the fountain. So back to Vectorworks, model, create image prop. We're going to import an image file. You should download the file from WebCourses, and this is the fountain spray PNG file. So if you open that, it wants to be 18 inches tall. We do want to use a mask. We'll create the mask. We're going to reuse this prop's color and transparent color. Oh, actually, it's a PNG. We can use the alpha channel, I believe. We will leave all of these the same. Actually, let's not do constant reflectivity. That'll we're not going to see the difference right now, but later on when we do the lighting, we will. That should do it. So if we click OK, that entered itself into the. The program always inserts that at the plane level. So it's going to be down at the bottom a little bit. So I'm going to take it and put it there in the center and then back to front. And oh, it's gone back to the bottom again. And then we'll move it up, probably right along in there. Let's see what that looks like. So that's looking better. With the water coming out at the top here, to create the water illusion, it would be nice to have some water actually spilling over the sides of the bowl. So in order to do that, we're going to create a hollow cylinder that wraps around the bowl and then create a different water texture that's also a transparent texture that has little water drops on it. So let's start by creating the hollow cylinder. So we're going to go to top view, use the circle tool, and draw a circle that corresponds to the size of the bowl. Vectorworks does something weird, and wireframe drawings, it doesn't draw curved things the way you would think it would. You would think that this would be the outer limits of the curve of the bowl, but in fact it goes all the way to here, to the end of the lines. So just be aware of that it, when you're looking in wireframe at the extent of anything that's curved, often what appears to be the edge is not really the edge. So in order to extrude this as a hollow cylinder, I need to, instead of having a solid disc to extrude, what I actually need is a very, very thin donut to extrude. So I'm gonna, with my circle selected here, I'm going to use the offset tool. I'm going to set it to 0.1 inches. It can be very small. And click here to create a circle that's 0.1 inches larger. Then I'm going to send that to back, or sorry, I'm going to send it backward behind the other circle. So if I zoom in, you'll see that I've got two circles here that are very close in size. So I'm going to select both of them and do a modify clip surface, and then hit delete. So now I have this very thin donut that I can extrude. So I'm going to extrude it 5 feet. Then we're going to go to front and pull it up so that it corresponds to the top of the bowl there. So if we look at this in isometric and OpenGL, you'll see what's going on. So there's this, it's like a can without a top, circling around the bowl. So next we need to create the texture. You have available in web courses this file, this PNG file, which is just little tiny droplets of water, basically. This was created from this image. I did a Google search for dripping water, I think, and looked at many, many, many different pictures of water and decided that this one was probably the most useful one. I selected in Photoshop all of the white and copied it and then pasted it into a file that had a transparent background. I actually originally started with this. This is what it originally looked like. When I tried this in the file, it looked super cheesy. So this version, the Fountain Drip 2, is a simplification. I think I'm trying to remember exactly what I did. It looks like I just took part of it, and yeah, it's just this part, and got rid of everything over here that was really, it looked like Niagara Falls when it was applied. So this is Fountain Drip 2. So we're going to create a texture with that. So if you go to the resource manager and create new resource, we want a RenderWorks texture. We're going to call this Fountain Drip. I'm going to have to call mine Fountain Drip 2 because I already have a Fountain Drip texture. But it's going to be, the color is going to be based on image. You want to import the image file, and you want to import the Fountain Drip 2 file that you downloaded from web courses. We'll say OK. The size of this, through some trial and error, it turns out to be 9 feet, I believe. We'll change this to 9 feet. And then the transparency, we need to create an image mask, and we're going to reuse the same image. And since it's a PNG, we'll use the alpha channel. PNGs automatically create an alpha channel if they have a transparent background that you could just tell Vectorworks to use the transparent background as an alpha channel. If it's a JPEG that has a solid color background, you have to tell it transparent color and then select the color that is the transparency. So I would click OK. It's going to look like this. OK. You can see how the transparency works there. We'll say OK. And then we're going to select the cylinder and apply our fountain drip texture to it. So there it is. Let's look at it from the front. And there we have our fountain with the water dripping. In OpenGL, it looks a little cartoony, but in the final rendered image, because it's farther away and also because the rendering is better, it actually does do a pretty good job of mimicking water. So our next step will be to turn this fountain into a symbol. So we're going to go to top. I'm going to draw a circle here to represent the bowl of the fountain, and then we'll draw a octagon to be, draw straight please, the inside, and I'm going to then send that backward. And then I'm going to draw another octagon to represent the outside. I'm going to send that backward twice. I send backward. All right. So that will be I think I'm going to actually make this slightly darker. I'm not going to make it 40%, so it's as dark as a wall, but I'm going to make it like 20, so it's going to look like that. And while we're at it, what the heck, we can make this a different color too. Technically, it should be lighter because it's taller, but I think it would look better if it were slightly darker. So how about there we go. Okay, so now we have all of the 3D parts and these three 2D parts, and we can select it all and create a symbol. Modify, create symbol. We'll call this fountain. And we'll leave all that the same. Okay, we're going to put this in the scenery symbols folder. And there it is. And then if we exit, we have our fountain on our floor. We can take a look at that and see that there it is. In part 2, we will create the plants that go around the fountain, and we'll put in the walls, and that will complete this week's portion of the hotel lobby. So coming up next in part 2, plants and walls.